Vice Chair Clarity, would you like to move House File 1360 before committee?
So moved.
Wonderful. House File 1360 is before the committee, and I see that you have an A1 amendment. Would you briefly explain your amendment?
Basically, there was a clerical error, so the right amount was not carried over. So that was the only change.
Got it. Thank you. Any questions on the A1 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The A1 amendment's adopted. With that, Representative Clardy, proceed.
Thank you, Chair Joachim. Thank you, committee. What this bill does is House File 1360, it provides increases to safe school revenue and changes the allowable uses. The specific provisions include triple safe school revenue for an additional district from $36 to $108 per pupil. It provides proportional increases for intermediate school districts and adds other cooperative school districts. It equalizes the levy to address the disparities in property wealth among school districts. It also sets the minimum guaranteed funding level at $100,000, and it expands allowable use to include costs associated with cybersecurity. So school districts do not have the funding for necessary training for staff support or specialized mental health services that meet the increasing students' needs and prevent unsafe situations for students and staff. This bill will support school districts to hire more support personnel such as counselors and social workers, nurses, and increase the safety security of the facilities. And Madam Chair, at this point I have a couple testifiers. Would you like to proceed with them, or should I introduce them?
No, that's okay. I will take care. Sorry, I was distracted by a side conversation. No, yes, we may go to your testifiers. I have first on the list Peter Olsen-Skog. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dr. Peter Olsen-Skog, and I thank the committee for the opportunity to testify. So I serve as the superintendent for the West St. Paul, Mendota Heights, and Eagan Area School District, and I'm testifying for AMSD in support of House File 1360. Our Safe Schools revenue is truly essential for our schools. It funds critical roles like therapists, counselors, suicide prevention, and drug abuse prevention, and that's just to name a few, just on the people side of the equation. Unfortunately, our Safe Schools revenue has been frozen at $36 per student for 10 years plus. For our district, that would fund about 2 positions to meet the needs of 5,000 kids. The Minnesota Student Survey clearly indicates why that is not enough. Just in the last 3 years, we've seen a 26% increase in the percentage of students who report long-term mental health problems. And so now, more than half, almost 60% of our 11th grade females report long-term mental health problems. So now what? What happens when we don't have the people to help support them? And sadly, many of them start to hurt themselves. More than 1 in 3 of our middle school and high school females report having purposely hurt themselves. I'm talking about cutting, burning, bruising. 1 in 5 have hurt themselves more than 6 times in the last year alone. And then what? Many start to consider suicide. 1 in 5 have seriously considered suicide in the last year. And if you look at just the 11th grade females, half have seriously considered suicide. And then tragically, some attempt it. 1 in 5 of our 11th grade females report actually having attempted suicide, and the rates are not as high for our males, but they're still very concerning. 1 in 6 report seriously considering suicide, and 1 in 10 have attempted it. So how are the children? They're hurting, and they need more from us. Their needs, our children's needs, has to be prioritized. With this bill, We could fund 4 more positions in our district, and with our wait lists for therapists and counseling, we would fill those caseloads tomorrow. I ask the committee to support this bill. It identifies a clear need and provides the funds to meet it.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll move to your next testifier. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Marcy Dowd, and I am the Superintendent of Intermediate School District 287. 287 serves 11 member districts in the West Metro, and our enrollment is just under 900 students. For those that are not familiar with intermediate school districts, there are 4 in the state of Minnesota, and we provide federal setting 4 or specialized services, as well as educational options for students, alternative pathways, grades K through 12, and we provide special education transitional services ages 18 through 21. I am here to recommend, in recommendation of the House File 1360, Safe Schools Revenue. First, I want to acknowledge the language that specifically identifies intermediate school districts. When the word intermediate is not part of a funding bill, a part of the language, our students do not receive that direct funding to support programs. So to the authors, I want to acknowledge and thank you for including intermediates in this language. Unfortunately, school safety is in the headlines not only nationwide, but locally. It hits home specifically for our district, District 287. Just over a year ago, we recently had the anniversary of a shooting and killing of a student in our district, and most recently within St. Paul Public Schools. Our schools need to be safe, and we need the resources to keep our students safe. In District 287, we talk about layers of safety, and our schools need that layered approach. You all may be familiar with the layered approach because of COVID. We had those layers of mitigation, and it's the same thing with safety. It's not one magic thing that we do in public schools. It's the layering and the approaches that we use to support a safe school. So what we do know is that at the base of that is the relationships we have, our staff have with students. And what we layer upon that is our mental health support, both internally and externally, student safety coaches, student screening, visitor check-in systems, locked doors and cameras, emergency notification systems, and robust safety planning and significant professional development for all of our staff. And due to the shooting over a year ago, we installed weapon detection systems based on the input from our students, our staff, and our families. That is one addition that we have in our layered approach. The annual cost for District 287 for 900 students for all of those safety measures is over $1.4 million. And so I've shared with you the physical and the emotional layers that we provide. There's also another layer that is impacting public schools, and that's cyber safety. The insurance for our district will be $65,000 next year for cyber. So safety has been a huge part of public schools. And what we know about brain research is when a student is not safe, or they're in the fight or flight part of their brain, they are unable to move to that executive functioning and that where learning really occurs. And so I ask you, please help us with increasing funding to support our school safety, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Superintendent, and both superintendents, thank you. With that, we've got one more testifier, I believe. Go ahead, sit down, state your name for the record, and proceed.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is John Morstead. Excuse me. I'm the Executive Director of Finance and Operations with Osseo Area Schools, the 5th largest district in the state, serving about 21,000 students. I'm also the current Vice President of the Minnesota Association of School Business Officials, or MASBO. Appreciate the opportunity to speak regarding the Safe Schools revenue and its effect on both Osseo Area Schools and other school districts. Safe Schools revenue was last adjusted in 2015 by $6 per pupil. Since then, as we've seen with many categorical revenues, we've lost purchasing power year over year. in trying in each of those specific areas. Our district uses this revenue to pay for school resource officers, who are a vital piece of the pie in creating a safe learning environment within our schools, along with our school management specialists, which are staff specifically hired to provide behavioral support for students and to focus on creating relationships with individual students. Our district has also added several mental health support staff using one-time federal funds that we would like to retain, as we've seen very positive results in the efforts from these staff. Currently, on an annual basis, we have to make a difficult decision to make reductions and either reduce or reallocate school management specialist positions because of the annual increases to our school resource officer contracts. And we want to retain the school resource officers first and foremost. But the value of our school management specialists are very, very important to us. So we're essentially taking budget from other areas and squeezing that so we can maintain these people. But as it stands, and as you've heard from the superintendent colleagues who spoke prior to me, maintain is not adequate. The needs are outweighing our capabilities today. So we need a way to expand that so we can reach every student. The legislation proposed to triple Safe Schools revenue would allow Osseo area schools to invest in maintaining and increasing our mental health support staff to better reach students in need. Statistics have shown that when we're provided with resources to make critical connections with every student so they feel safe and they feel heard, the overall school environment becomes a much safer place for everyone. There have been previously mentions of cybersecurity. I think it's safe to say schools in Minnesota are under attack right now. We've seen, and I know of many active cybersecurity and ransomware situations that are currently in schools across the state, and not just independent school districts, but cooperatives that are under attack. And a lot of, especially the smaller school districts, simply do not have the resources to be able to fund cybersecurity in a way where our insurance companies will pick up. We've seen bills increase by 400%, 500%, 600% for cybersecurity insurance. So the increase in this revenue is a vital component to help protect schools and protect that student data. Osseo Schools strongly supports this legislation to increase the Safe Schools revenue, and on behalf of all school business officials across the state of Minnesota, MASBO also strongly supports this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, members, I'll go to the table for questions or comments. Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the bill author for bringing this forward. And to the testifiers, I have a couple of questions. I have no problem with the bill, and I think tripling the Safe Schools levy is a move in the right direction. But just a couple things for clarification. So we just heard from Mr. Morstead. We're including in here cybersecurity measures. So what you're really protecting against here is, you mentioned ransomware, and not necessarily cybersecurity and cyberbullying. It's the school districts protecting against the outside attacks and protecting their own digital assets. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go
Pardon
ahead and state your name for the record again. Proceed.
Okay. Again, John Morstead.
Thank you.
So cybersecurity is really an all-encompassing feature, both one of protecting data and also protecting students in a cyber environment. I guess the portion I was testifying to is much more about protecting the data, as that's where we're seeing immediate concerns, as hackers have seen value in providing that data. What ultimately they can do is take data from a school and use that in conjunction with data they can steal from other places to create false identities. Unfortunately, for a lot of students, we're seeing false identities created for kids as young as second grade, where credit cards are being opened in their names. And they have no idea that's happening. Charges are being made on those, and their credit files for their future are being destroyed. But for our, we can't get too far into the detail on it, but for us, it's protecting that student data. There's a lot of private data that we hold, both HIPAA data and just general school private data that we need to be able to protect. And some districts have the ability to do that, but it's very expensive. Like I said, we've seen, districts used to have insurance rates that were, hey, it's $5,000 for your cybersecurity policy. And what did you say it was? 25, 65,000. Ours is, I think, close to $250,000. That's some pretty substantial increases in dollars just for this one little area. Thank you.
Representative Krisha.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that. And so one improvement I might suggest, everything you said, I don't disagree with. I think maybe from a logistics point of view, I understand why it's in here. I'm not asking that we take it out, but we should look at removing that at a later date and putting it to a different funding stream. I think that it confuses the issue of security for students and what some of the safe schools. That's just one thing that I'm thinking about. I'm not trying to take the bill down or take that down. Two other quick questions, if you could just answer these. And I'm not looking for necessarily definitive solutions, but as I listened through the mental health and I listened through some of the concerns about the suicide rates and all that, and top of mind for me is student security and some of the external forces and the conflicts. So just two questions that I had that you could offer some ideas on. How can this be used to give teachers more support when I think a lot of times they feel like they're not getting as much support in these very volatile situations? Being a teacher myself and knowing that administrative support can be very helpful when there's a disruptive student or when there's a disruptive event. And then the second question, and I'll let you answer it to both of these, is how can this be used in the line of moving disruptive students or disruptive situations? How do we remove those threats? And could this revenue increase help us with some ideas or programs?
Thank you, Representative Krisha. Testifiers, could you please be very brief when you answer? We still have 4 bills on the agenda, and we have to be done at noon, and I've got 4 other members signed up. So thank you, Dr. Olson-Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Briefly, all of the things that you mentioned can be utilized within the funding stream as it stands. So looking at different ways to support teachers in the classroom, that's an allowable use in the bill. Looking at different ways to support students in crisis, our focus would be to put in things that are preventative to help the students before they become a concern in the classroom, so to help them through their crisis, to help them with their therapy needs, whatever it is, so that the teachers, when they enter the classroom, and they're not a concern to the teachers. So whichever approach that you take for it, the revenue currently would allow a school district to make those decisions and to support it in that way.
Representative Krisha, quick follow-up.
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Representative Sensimura.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Carty, for bringing this bill. This is an important bill. This is a timely bill. I wish that we had more time today to talk about this because I know that this is a really important measure that we need to take regarding school safety. I've had talks with my own district, Minneapolis, about this, but I think it's just the start, right? I appreciated the comments about kind of the layers of support that we need to take for this issue. It's not one thing. I mean, when we think about the dangers, the threats to our schools and students, they are myriad, right? There's so much, and I can think of just in Minneapolis and St. Paul in the last 2 weeks, we've had violence that's coming from the outside. We've had violence that's coming from student to student. We've had cybersecurity attacks. So I think that this bill is a start. I think that we need to give the districts the funding that they're asking for. I do want to say that I have a few I have some concerns or cautions, and I think it just is for continued, conversation. Really quickly, actually, I just wanted to make one note to something that the first testifier talked about. Thank you for bringing in the statistics kind of about what our young people are facing. I do want to say that you mentioned one statistic around gender and, how male students were reporting kind of less, mental health concerns than female students. I think that we should be cautious when we think about that because we actually know that male students are less likely to report and are more likely to be involved in violence. And so I think we do really need to be thinking kind of about the culture that our male students are growing up in and kind of the difference between what they're reporting and like what we are seeing. And I want us to think about how the environment of a school affects, student behavior. I know that I had a conversation with some folks from Minneapolis recently, and they're telling me about kind of some of the, measures that they're thinking about related to guns in schools and kind of talking about potentially some new technology that would kind of be like a metal detector, but would be a little less less, I don't know, obvious, right? But you would still have to have 2 staff members that would be sitting at the front of the school, kind of monitoring, checking students if it goes off. And, those are 2 people that can't be doing other things that we need within the school. So I think mostly I want to say that this is something we can do in the school building, but we have to be doing things outside of school around gun safety control and gun safety measures. It is absolutely what we need to do at the legislature this year. I know that, for Minneapolis, it's on their list of legislative priorities because we can lock down the schools as much as we want, but if guns are still in our community, then our kids are not safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Representative Bennett.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Representative Clardy. This is a good bill. I think the funding is important. Safe schools are obviously very important. Quick question. I know charter schools currently are excluded from this funding and in this bill are still excluded. Have you considered including charter schools because those are our students as well?
Representative Clardy.
Thank you, Chair Joachim. Thank you, Representative Bennett. There have been discussions around that. The current funding stream does not allow charters to be involved in this. I know that there are 2 other representatives working on trying to resolve that right now, one on the Democratic Party side and one on the Republican Party side. So it is something that's of concern because, like you said, all of our children need to be safe. So it's a funding stream issue.
Thank you. Representative Bennett, yes, part of that is charter schools don't have levy authority. So the first $36 in this is sheer levy authority. And then if we add it, since we're a zero levy committee, we'd be adding state aid to whatever we did. Otherwise, it would be going on to the property taxpayers. Then we have to talk about equalization. So it's a little complicated, but I've been in discussions with the charter schools. It's a bigger conversation than just like, hey, let's just give them money on this. So we're working on it. Might not get done this year, but it's an ongoing conversation. Representative Ream.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill forward. The testimony was sobering, and I know we do need to support our children more. And I'm reading all these reports about how the percentage of our teens, our kids, the mental health issues are increasing. And I guess I have a question about the school resource officers, because I know for some people that's really controversial. Some people think, an increased, police presence in the school might disproportionately affect Black and brown children. So there's that one camp, and then there's other camp that says, we need to have more power in the school to take down, a shooter or, deal with a situation. And I guess I have 2 and fairly short questions, but have you worked with NAMI Minnesota on this? Because I know they're really a great resource. And then secondly, who gets to decide how the funding is used? Is it up to the school board? Thank you.
Either of the superintendents, Representative Clardy.
I'm going to jump in, and then they can add something if they want to. The beauty of this bill is local control, because we're trying not to do the top-down thing, but the local school board knows what the needs of the community are. So, did you want to add anything?
Superintendent.
Representative Clardy is accurate. It would be a collaboration between the board and the administration to determine the needs for the school district and to develop a plan for expending the funds.
Got it. And Representative Paris-Vega, if it's just to this question, then we have to move on. Go ahead.
I want to just say that, thank you, Madam Chair, really quick. I just left, working with the St. Paul School District's community liaisons right now. And the ask of the request specifically is for the services that this bill is providing, is connection with community and the leaders from the school, because it's taking way more. You have businesses that are being affected right outside the school that are asking for the school's help, and you have the school's help that are asking for our help. And this is a way of ensuring that help for the full community that supports the everyday student. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Paris-Vega. With that, Representative Clardy, final comments.
I will keep it brief. I guess most of us grew up learning about like Maslow And this is definitely one that covers that as far as like the security and safety of like mental health and physical safety. So I appreciate the support on this bill, and I would just the time is right.
Thank you, Representative Clardy. With that, I'll move that House File 1360 be laid over for possible inclusion in Education Finance Bill.